All right, so we're live. We're back, and this is Wise Talk, episode 4, if I'm not mistaken. So 4 weeks of trying to get some thought leaders together and discuss the problems and hopefully provide a solution, a step, or action plan or something that you can take away from this. And so if that being the case, we have a new guest. So I'll give George a chance to introduce himself, and then I'll give the topic, and then we'll dive right into it and try to help each other out, encourage one another, and leave here smarter than we came in. The topic for today will be recession, depression. Are we currently in a recession? And if we are, as this thing unfolds, will it be 10 times worse or mild or what? And will it result in the depression? And what would that look like if it happened?
Oh, great. Thanks, guys. We're in a depression since 2008. We actually haven't gotten out of it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of opinion. I don't even think it's debatable. And the reason I say that is because if we define a depression as negative real GDP growth, and you look at GDP growth right now and you adjust it for the actual inflation, let's say you use the shadow stats measurement of current inflation, CPI, then the real GDP growth is way negative. And then if you add to that, and this is what a lot of people don't think about, they just see that headline real GDP and think, oh, wow, we're growing at 2-3%, whatever it is. But they don't look at the deficit, the budget deficit of the federal government.
The Federal Reserve is going to buy anything that is shaky. It's if we have problems in the derivatives, they're going to monetize those. If we have problems in, like they're doing right now, where these like major banks, they're not lending to each other, so they're throwing money in the overnight repo market. They're just going to throw money. That's what they get. That's all they can do.
What I think is different now is that the word depression will be considered a relatively nice and clean word in comparison to what the history books will say about this current time period, because we're basing the word depression upon our prior knowledge of 1929, 30s time frame, and all the other recessions that led to banking catastrophes, monetary policy implementation, whatever. So our point of reference happens to be in our past, but I think currently what we're dealing with now is more like a global systemic meltdown, because this is just not an isolated event. So depression to me is going to be a nice word when we look back, because this will be the reshaping of our entire monetary system. What do we do? How do we take advantage of this thing that we know is going to occur?
I think it depends on whether you think that the depression that we're going to go into is going to be a deflationary depression or an inflationary depression. A lot of people hear the word depression and they just associate it with deflation, but that's not necessarily true. If you look at it as a negative real GDP growth, we can definitely have hyperinflation. Part of my investment philosophy is you always buy things that are cheap, sell them when they're expensive. You get paid to own things. You have insurance, which means diversification, insuring to gold, and then have diversification in your political risk and your currency risk. So we talked about what's cheap. You're getting paid to own it. Going to insurance, you got to have some gold or Bitcoin, whichever you prefer.
If you're in my mindset where I'm looking at maybe 2, 3, 4 years gradual transition into a new monetary system, then I'm actually getting ahead of where everyone else is right now, where everyone's looking at, and I've used this example before, everyone's floating around on the Titanic, and I'm already on the ship waiting for everyone else. That's where my mind's at, because I see and I recognize the transition into the new currency system. So I'm getting ahead of it. And I also hold, gold and silver.
If it goes bad and it's just another normal bad, I agree with what George is saying. I agree with what Ben's saying. But I see an even worse bad. And what informs me of this opinion is Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. What is being done on an international level. And, the term, of course, is sustainable development. Well, to get sustainable development, you're going to lose your property rights. You're going to be put into what is called stack and packs.
What do you do? Prepare? I mean, there's a lot you can do, but I tried to focus on that in our last round, and that was the term counterparty risk. Because no matter how you apply that thought process to your current living geography, financial situation, adobe, you have to think counterparty risk. You can't have bars. You can't have bars because people don't know what that bar consists of. There's just too many issues to deal with. If you have government issued Royal Canadian Mint, Australian Mint, UK Mint, United States Mint, a coin that people actually recognize, that it's obvious that it hasn't been faked, you're in good shape. In different denominations, you need coin.